Hi, everybody. Happy Tuesday. My name is Meg. I am part of the moderation team here at PowerToFly, and I am super excited to be talking to y'all today. I'm really excited to dig into this next subject with our great speakers from Blue Cross Blue Shield, North Carolina. And before we get started, I just have a couple quick housekeeping items to go over with you guys. If you are joining us for yet another chat and learn session or office hours or anything, this will be a little bit old hat to you, but I promise we'll get through it quickly, and that way the Blue Cross Blue Shield team can get started with their information sharing with us. So first things first, today, like all of our virtual events, is all about you. It's all about our community members, and it is all about participation. So you are more than welcome to turn your cameras on and come off mute, as well as kind of share your lovely maskless faces with us safely. I very much value seeing new faces while we're still in month 9 of the quarantine. So please feel free to do so. No pressure if you don't feel really camera ready, but again, you don't have to be insta perfect to join us. Furry coworkers, kids, everybody's kind of encouraged to join, so don't feel like you have to have the picture perfect setup to be able to join us today. If you do come off mute to contribute with a question or a comment or anything, we highly encourage that, but just know that if you do come off mute, you are going to show up on our live recording as well as our streaming of this session to our website. So if you want to participate without being seen on camera or on the recording, not a problem. All you have to do is put whatever question or comment you have into the Zoom group chat. Now, if by chance you are in, let's say, deep cover and you really don't want anyone to know you're here, not a problem. You can still participate by putting your question or comment into the Zoom chat, but instead of sending it to everyone, you're going to use that drop-down menu and just send it to me directly. You'll see my name listed on there. It's Meg-PowerToFly. So like I said, the session is being recorded. So everyone that registered for today's session, whether they are joining us today for 5 minutes, stay for the full chat for 60, or if you for some reason forgot the session was happening and are watching this recording later, everybody that registered will get an email with a link to rewatch the recording in about 1 to 2 business days. If you hear something amazing and you just can't wait to share it with a friend or a coworker, no worries. You can always get at the recording sooner by checking out our YouTube channel. We are at PowerToFly. I highly recommend that you subscribe there. It is a great way to make sure that you stay up to date on our videos without clogging up your inbox. I also recommend that you check us out and follow us on any of our other social media channels. We are at PowerToFly on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, as well as YouTube. So as we get started here, the last thing I have to raise for y'all is, I don't know if you can hear it under me talking, but I've got 2 bulldogs snoring under my desk. So I will be going off, I'll be going off, like kind of back and forth, on and off mute, and I'll be off mute or on mute when I'm not actively speaking today. I highly encourage you guys to do the same. If you do want to participate, again, you are more than welcome to and highly encouraged. Just make sure you only come off mute when you're actively speaking, and go back off mute when you're done. And if I do mute you for whatever reason, it won't be in the middle of a question, but let's say somebody's got some background noise going on and it's messing with the sound for everybody, I might mute you. It's not a rebuke. You are still more than welcome to participate. Just make sure you only unmute when you're actively speaking, and try not to interrupt our speaker or any other guests. I get paid to fill the silence, so please feel free to interrupt me if you have a question or a comment that you'd like to voice. All right, so as we get started here, I can't wait to introduce you to our speakers. Cheryl Parquet is the Director of Community Engagement and Marketing Activation at Blue Cross Blue Shield of North Carolina, and she has an amazing resume, which you can read the rest of on the rest of the slide. Cheryl, is there anything in particular you'd like to highlight for our group today, or anything that really stands out to you as the reason that you are speaking today?
Yes, so I'll just say that I've been leading our community and diversity engagement team for the past 3 years as a director, but I've been in community relations over or nearly 13 years now. And so the community and the diversity piece has been a huge part of my career over the past decade.
Very nice. Thank you for sharing that, Cheryl. Next up, we have Tia. Tia is an analytics consultant that works with the Drivers of Health Strategy team at Blue Cross Blue Shield of North Carolina. Tia, you have, again, a really impressive resume here. Doctoral prepared, so does that mean you're defending your thesis sometime soon?
Oh no, that means I have defended a dissertation. I got my doctorate in 2014. Yeah.
Thank you for that clarification.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's super awesome and greatly impressive from my mind. I barely finished my undergrad. Is there anything about your background that you'd like to share with us that stands out for why you're super excited to be chatting with us today on this subject?
Sure. Just in terms of the role that I'm in at Blue Cross, I'm an analytics consultant, and that means I am part of a team in our data and analytics division that supports our drivers of health strategy team with data and analytical insights to drive our strategy that we're developing for drivers of health forward. I'm passionate about this area because for almost 20 years now, I've been working in community health. And so I have a passion for building capacity in underserved communities and ensuring that they have access to the health and healthcare that they need.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, so before we get started today, Cheryl and Tia just have one more thing, my bad guys. Before we get started, I do just wanna highlight that Blue Cross Blue Shield of North Carolina is hiring. I'm gonna put a link into the chat in a couple minutes where you can check out this, their PowerToFly jobs page. So what that's going to do is it's going to give you some company info. You can also check out their events to see what events they might be participating with us in going forward. Stuff like today's chat and learn, our upcoming job fairs, our virtual summits. So please feel free to check that out. You can also click the tab that'll show you their current open roles. And then the biggest thing I can call out for you is that when you navigate to this page, there will be a big pink follow button in the upper right-hand corner of your screen. If you are at all interested in working with Blue Cross Blue Shield of North Carolina, I would very much encourage you to check them out and click that follow button. It's going to do a couple things for you. The first thing is it's going to tell the Blue Cross Blue Shield team that you are very interested in working with them. The other thing it's going to do is it's going to alert you when they have updates or changes to any of their information, or if they post new roles. So it's really great in that you don't have to, kind of keep coming back and keep checking their jobs board because it sort of works to make sure that you are updated as well as they know about you. So please feel free to do that. Like I said, if you're not familiar with our follow network, you can follow and unfollow as many companies as you'd like on PowerToFly. And you can, like I said, you can follow and unfollow at will. So it's also a really great thing to do to click that follow network, especially if you don't see any roles currently that would suit you, because that way, again, you can stay up to date when they post new roles. So I'll drop the link to that page in the chat here in just a second. So as we get started, Cheryl and Tia have a presentation that they'd like to share with us. So who would like to get us started from the Blue Cross Blue Shield team?
So I'll get us started. And if you could go, so me and Tia are pretty much just going to give you a high-level overview. We really want to take the time to answer your questions and hear from you guys, but we do want to give you a high-level overview of where Blue Cross is around investing in our health and how we're using data around food insecurity. If you could go to the next slide, Megan. Meg? Yeah. So Blue Cross has a significant investments in our community and region in our state. For over 85 years, we have been about community action, investments, and impact. When I talk about Blue Cross and Blue Shield, we are truly living out our mission, and that is to improve the health and well-being of our customers and our communities. And over the past 10 years, from a community standpoint, we have donated over $75 million across communities across our state and volunteered thousands of hours into our local community. A former CEO of ours would always say, like, it's in our DNA. And I truly believe that investing and giving back in our community is part of who we are at Blue Cross. If you could go to the next slide. So in 2018, we were having lots of changes within our company, and it really gave us an opportunity to have a renewed focus and really centralize our work around in the community. And so our leaders developed a pillar, and we call it the community health pillar. And it reads, and our mission is to partner with, support, and invest in communities across North Carolina to achieve the highest level of health for all people. our leadership was very purposeful in adopting this new strategy and really putting community health at the top of our priorities within our company. And so under our new leadership, we are continuing to build and improve on the health and wellness of our communities. Next slide. And so with that, we really took the opportunity to really discuss how can we focus on those social determinants of health. And so we're talking about things such as transportation, safe housing, early childhood interventions, access to care. So that is where we're really looking at putting our dollars at in the community. However, we had lots of discussion and said, where can we make the biggest impact? And when we really talked about making the biggest impact, it was around food insecurity. Food insecurity, we know, is critical to the health of all North Carolinians. When we talk about food, we're talking about people's diets, we're talking about diabetes, we're talking about heart disease. And as a company, we felt like food insecurity is where we really wanted to put our funding, put a stake in the ground, and really move forward as a community to address these issues. Next slide. And so when we talk about food insecurity, I just want to ground us. Food insecurity is a lack of access to having enough food at all times to have an active and healthy life. It is not hunger. A lot of times people confuse hunger and food insecurity. Hunger is just a discomfort. I could be hungry right now if I'm working throughout the day and haven't eaten. But having food insecurity means you just don't have the energy to get through a day and that you're dealing with chronic diseases. And so for us, what we've been doing is through our investments and collaborations has looking at really making an impact for the entire food system. We're looking at supporting local farmers, helping nonprofits expand their food production and capacity. We're looking at supporting access and delivering foods to the food banks so they can get foods out to the people that need it the most. We're also working with organizations to increase awareness of and to break the stigma around food assistance programs as well. Next slide. So I really want us to take a close look at the numbers, because when we talk about food insecurity, it's just not having enough food, but people are making like choices in their life. If you look at this slide, 69% of people are choosing food between having food and paying their utilities. We have people that are experiencing between having food and getting back and forth to work. And so looking at this slide, about 900,000 children in North Carolina actually are at risk of hunger and being food insecure within our state. And with that, we have 693,000 North Carolina students. That's 45% of the population that participate in our free and reduced lunch programs within our state. And if we even look further down into this and take a look at seniors, 1 in 5 seniors are saying that they are suffering from food insecurity. And so we understand that this is not just an issue for one population. This is an issue for everyone within our state. And we really want to work to help resolve that. And so next slide. And so this slide will surely show you the average food insecure rate in North Carolina is 17%. We have nearly 44 counties that are over 17%, and many are above 20%, and some are as high as 26% around food insecurity. Not only that, when we look at the numbers around our state, we know that nearly 1.5 million people are actually struggling from food insecurity. And so our goal over the next 3 to 5 years is to reduce the food insecurity numbers. We will do this by making investments and also creating pilots within our state. And so looking at this map, and Tia's going to go a little deeper into the data, but looking at this map, we can tell just by these numbers alone where we have issues at. And so again, if you look at those places that are red on the slide, you're going to notice that southeastern and eastern North Carolina are those areas that we're truly going to look at targeting. We know that by sheer their food insecurity rates are over 19%. There's an opportunity for us to step in and put in some pilots and make investments there that can really change the areas where they live. And so now I want to turn it over to Tia and just let her talk about how we're using data.
Thank you, Cheryl. Next slide. So I'm going to bring us up a level before we talk about data related to food insecurity, and first talk about why data is important. Data is important in the work that we're doing currently within Drivers of Health Strategy at Blue Cross for a few reasons. It shows us that people in our member population are affected by the issue. It lets us know that there is a need, and it lets us know how significant a specific need is, like food insecurity. Data also lets us know what people or what groups within our membership are most affected by a particular issue, or what people around the state. For example, who might be most impacted by food security issues? Is it the senior population? Is it people with certain chronic conditions? So data lets us pinpoint that as well. We use data to explore relationships between risk factors and outcomes. For example, does the use of community-based medical transportation services for people who don't have cars decrease ER utilization over time? So we look for relationships and patterns to explore these risk factor relationships. Data also can be used to help us pinpoint where certain pilot projects will be deployed. Based on data, we can know where the need exists, and that's where we'll target our programs in priority order to address underserved individuals. And lastly, data that's collected and monitored by our Drivers of Health data and analytics team will help us support the business, the Drivers of Health strategy team, in determining how successful a pilot intervention was within a particular population. So the evaluation of such data, monitoring and assessing it, lets us know, will we scale this within the larger population? Will we scale this pilot project? How will we change or refine this project? Was the project not successful, and do we need to consider retiring the project because we did not meet desired outcomes? So, next slide. All right, so just at a really high level, just wanted to explain to the audience today how our approach for working with data at Blue Cross North Carolina. Basically, we're analyzing data to assess our members' drivers of health needs. And from there, we're able to identify specific populations or geographic areas of need. Notice the map that Cheryl showed right before I began this piece on data. That is actually one of the visualization tools that are used to show where data needs exist. That's actually called a heat map or hot spotting, where you're able to tell specific areas of the state, in this case, that are most affected by food insecurity. Okay. We also use, we work with data, as I've said, to support our Drivers of Health strategy team in pilot intervention development. And then again, to evaluate these pilot interventions, we use data to inform the decisions on whether we're going to, again, scale, refine, or retire a pilot project that we've invested in. What's involved when I say we analyze this Drivers of Health data at Blue Cross? Well, you see in the visual I have there at the bottom of the slide, when we analyze, we're looking for patterns and trends in our data. These analyses can be done through a variety of statistical tests, mathematical modeling, algorithms that our team comes up with, and even predictive modeling. So there's a lot of work behind the scenes with this data that can go into the analysis process. And each of these types of data-driven work that I'm indicating here, our pod members engage with regularly to provide the business, our Drivers of Health strategy team, with insights that help drive their particular work. There are data scientists, there are insights analysts, data engineers, and data consultants, data visualization experts that come together and work with this data to produce what the business needs to drive the Drivers of Health strategy forward. Next slide. All right, so now I want to talk just a bit about some specifics around how we're using the data for pilot interventions here at Blue Cross. So what this slide is showing is basically two ways that we are identifying target populations for these pilot interventions. One way we're doing so is we're analyzing membership data to target members who are most at risk for chronic disease due to lack of resources for food. We look at data around chronic disease diagnoses, for instance, people that are have diagnoses of diabetes. We look at people with lower incomes, and we look at people that are experiencing gaps in their care. Maybe they, in fact, do have diabetes and they're not visiting their provider regularly. So all of these types of data can help us target a population who may be most at risk for food security, and therefore we know where we may want to pilot an intervention. The intervention may look like offering members more resources to purchase healthy fruits and vegetables so that they are indeed more food secure, and that will help support their diabetes and will help with the care gaps that they may be experiencing. Another way that I wanted to point out is being able to analyze survey data from which we can target members. And what I mean there is there may be surveys that we're deploying among membership so that we can determine who runs out of food during the month, who has nutritional counseling needs, who could benefit from a nutritional coach, and who might qualify for federal programs like SNAP and food stamps. So once we know the responses on for survey data that assesses those types of questions, we could potentially pilot a project that offers members opportunities to receive coaching, maybe delivery of free healthy food. We could partner with a vendor that is providing that type of service as a pilot project. So these are just some examples of the types of data that the Drivers of Health Pod might provide to the business and resulting pilot programs that come from these data-driven insights. Next slide. All right, and so to wrap it up, you may say, well, why is all of this important? How can data-driven interventions actually impact the members of Blue Cross Blue Shield? Well, there are a few ways that the types of pilot efforts I described can potentially impact our members. Well, if people don't have to think hard about where their next meal is coming from, the basic necessities of life, they could potentially focus more on the health issues that they're experiencing. And related to that, if people are receiving more resources or monetary means to be able to focus on eliminating a Drivers of Health barrier, then they might have more money to help pay for their healthcare or health needs. And lastly, if we support members who need help with Drivers of Health, their health might improve and their medical expenses could decrease. So that is all I have from a high-level data perspective, and we can move on to the next slide, Meg.
Sorry, guys, I loaded up the wrong slide to share here. So, share, there we go. So as we get started here, I do just have 2 slides here to share with you real quick. These are going to be the questions that y'all submitted prior to today's session. We had Tia and Cheryl go through them, pick the ones that were that they thought were going to be really great to answer, and then we reorganized them into a conversational format. So I'm going to pause on this screen and then I'll go forward to the next for in just a couple seconds. If you would like to take a screen grab here, please feel free. You don't have to take notes on any of our sessions. You can always review them later. But some of our more type A joiners prefer to maybe have a little bit of an idea what's coming. So please feel free to grab a screenshot if you'd like, and that'll give you kind of an idea on what's going to be asked next. And it can also help if you have a question that you'd like to ask, maybe it'll fit in with something we're going to ask here, or you can also see if it's something that we're already going to be touching on. So I'm going to go to the next slide here. Give you a couple of seconds here to take a screenshot again if you'd like. No need, no pressure to do so. Like I said, just some people prefer to have it kind of in their back pocket before we keep going. All right, so to start us off with the first question today, Cheryl, this one was aimed towards you. Do you have any advice on transitioning careers for experienced professionals?
So I'll just start by saying about 10 years ago, I was in home building, completely different from what I'm doing today. I was doing more things around sales and construction bills. And so what I'll just tell you is that when you're working on your resume or looking to transition, just make sure that you're looking at what are your transferable skills. If you're doing a resume, I wouldn't get into like the tactics of this is what I did, this is what I did, this is what I did, but really talk about what are those outcomes from the things that you've done and how did you use your skills to kind of like transform the work that you were doing. So I wouldn't get caught up in, hey, I've been in home building and healthcare is a big switch because it's something that I did. Even from a community standpoint, this was not something that I was doing in my career. However, it was something that I was doing like in my personal life, right? Volunteering and different things. And so when this job came open, I leaned on those things that I was doing outside of my day-to-day to put those things on my resume. So I would just really work through your resume and really just make it strong enough to think about what are those things that you're doing in the office and those things that you're doing outside of the office to make it stronger.
Excellent. I think that's really great advice. So thank you for sharing that with us, Cheryl. To go on to our next question here. This question is again for Cheryl. This person had asked, what organizations can we partner with to help with these philanthropic efforts, my bad, to help those access healthy food, transportation, and housing?
Yeah, so I mean, there are those organizations that really come top of mind. So the local food banks are number one when it comes to like having access to healthy foods. I think about housing, I think about Habitat, transportation, are there organizations with Boys and Girls Club that's offering transportation for kids? But really, when I think about like, what do we really need to do in this space? It's really how are we going to start having our nonprofit community and our for-profit community to really work together. So I think when I look at transportation, I think of Lyft. Like, how do we work with Lyft, knowing that they are providing transportation across our state? Are there partnerships that we at Blue Cross and other companies can work with them to provide our members access for that transportation? When we talk about housing, what are those things that we can do? I don't think a lot of times we think about like pest control. A lot of times housing isn't necessarily that someone needs a new house. It's how do we come in and work on pest control and mold? So I think it's going to come a time for us where we're having our nonprofit vendors and our for-profit vendors to come together and work together. And so that is where I would lean at. Again, Habitat, great for housing, but how do we work for Habitat where Habitat goes in for their critical repairs and actually takes a house that someone is working in and helps them get a new roof? Like those are some of the things that I think people don't know about Habitat. A lot of times it's getting the new house, but they actually go in with their critical repair. So thinking about organizations like that I would decide to work with.
So great. And actually, kind of coming at this from the other perspective, are there any things that you maybe look for as like a red flag of maybe that's not an organization that should be supported, or maybe you need to learn more about that organization before you get behind them?
Yeah, and so with us, we use a program called GuideStar. And so GuideStar really lets you go in and look at the financial impact of an organization. But I will say when talking to organizations, you want to make sure that they can do the work. So if you're making a donation to them, you want to make sure that they have enough staff, that you're having conversations with them. And you guys have the same outcomes. If you say, hey, we want to do critical repair on 100 houses, that they have the staff to be able to do that within a year. So it's really about having a conversation with the organization to make sure that they are prepared.
Great, thank you for that. I know it can be really tricky when you want to help to kind of parse that out. So thank you for both the great recommendations as well as maybe things to look out for. So for our next question, this is again for Cheryl. This person wanted to know, how does BCBS support the work-life balance? And I know that as we've moved into quarantine, a lot of us are calling it more of a work-life integration because so many of us are working out of the place we are living. But how does BCBS support this for their employees?
Yeah, and so I'll take this from like before COVID and in COVID. So before COVID, I'll say being at Blue Cross Blue Shield, being on campus, we had a backup daycare. There was a clinic on campus as well, and so it gave you the opportunity that if you had a child that was out of school, they could use the backup daycare on campus. When my kids were younger, like that was one of their favorite places to go, especially during summer camp, to be able to be there with mom. And having the clinic on site was another great resource as well. And we also have a bank on our campus as well, where employees could go and do their banking during the day. And so those were really great, benefits. And when I think about being home from COVID, the flexibility that I feel like that we've had and the grace that we've been given is the best work-life balance I can think of that a company given us. And so while the transition was hard for a lot of people, I think getting everyone set up with like the laptop and the desktop, we've had the opportunity to, get chairs and, get a small, I'll say a small reimbursement for your desk or internet, however you wanted to use that funding. And for people that had dependents, I mean, Blue Cross has truly stepped up for those that needed childcare and to be able to provide additional funding into the Flex account. And so I'll just say every step of the way during COVID, every time I thought of something, I feel like Blue Cross was right there, even before me thinking about the needs of our employees. With COVID coming, again, that has changed a lot. Blue Cross did not offer true sick time. We had PTO to take, but in light of COVID, we were given 2 weeks of sick time as well. And so, again, I think our company is really on the forefront of those things around work-life balance. We have our employee work resource groups that are working hard. They are having programs around mental health and the services that were offered through EPA. And again, I feel like throughout all of this, the resources that we've been provided, resources that people did not think about using. I will give you a perfect example too of something that I've used. And so I don't know how many people know we have this, but we actually have like this homework support that you can go out and use. And my daughter's in the 9th grade and she was working on some math stuff that I had no idea about. And I went out there and searched and was able to get connected to some resources that help with math. And so again, those are just resources where had I been in the office, maybe I would not have used them. But due to COVID, I've been turning to a lot of those resources during this time.
That's really great. I know that, not every COVID response, just like not every company is kind of built the same. So it can be, one of those things where it could vary wildly like between company to company, but also between like departments or locations. So that's really great to hear that BCBS has really supported y'all in that way and kind of given you the flexibility to really get what you might need to really support working from home. So that's awesome.
I'd like to weigh in on that too, Meg, if it's okay.
Yeah, go right ahead, please.
Yeah. So one thing that I did want to touch on with regard to how I felt very supported at Blue Cross over my 4 years there is the fact that we have employee networks. And these are groups with people that have similar interests as you. Like there's a women's employee network. There is a young professionals employee network. There's VetNet. There's the African American Black employee network. So these groups offer a variety of activities and connection points almost weekly that allows you to kind of come out of your work and be able to, really connect with other people, again, with similar interests as you, and with a keen focus on professional development as well as community service in those organizations as well. So I've always loved being a part of those employee networks since I've been on board at Blue Cross. And to Cheryl's point around COVID, I've been extremely impressed on how our organization has not skipped a beat with regard to still offering these activities and connection points that our employee networks allow us to have. So, every week there are still sessions, forums, professional development opportunities that come out of all, a variety of these employee networks that exist. So
that's so awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And you're right, that connection between, employees that might either share the same background or have the same concerns or have the same needs when it comes to work situations. It's so helpful to be able to kind of know that you are with other people that can really recognize what you're going through and help support you there. So that's so awesome. So this next question actually kind of is going to be answered in tandem with a question we were asked in the chat. So Michelle had asked, how specifically she posed it to Tia, but I think you both might be able to touch on this a little. She wants to know how you all conduct member surveys and what is the response rate. She says, I am a data scientist and epidemiologist at BCBS South Carolina, and we work closely with the clinical team who outreach to members. We're having a hard time with engagement.
So I'll start there. There is a specific unit within our organization that does outreach and member communications. I would have to take it offline and get back to you on what the response rate that unit experiences is, what they experience is. But I will say just anecdotally that we know through our Drivers of Health strategy efforts that there are some challenges that lie in getting survey data from membership. And I think some of that has to do with potential, distrust or being leery of what people might do or how people might view my data. If I tell them I'm food secure and may not be healthy, if I tell them my housing is compromised and I may live in a violent community, and so maybe my risk is up. But, I think it comes to being able to communicate with our members that we're using this Drivers of Health data information to actually create interventions to help and to support our members in being even healthier. This data is not being used, in assessing risk, if you will, to drive up insurance rates and costs. So I think that the messaging is important in that communication. And again, to that point, I do know that some of that survey data is a challenge to get.
Absolutely, that actually makes a ton of sense. You have people that conduct these surveys, and it's really difficult to know what's going to be done with that information. Is it going to be tied back to you? And like you said, is it going to be something that negatively impacts you later on if all you're doing is telling the truth about a situation that you are experiencing? So you're right. I think that open communication and transparency could definitely help, reassure people that it's in their best interest to answer truthfully and say what they need. So that y'all can better help meet those needs. Okay, so the question that we were then asked earlier on, which I know that was going to be addressed to both of you, this person had asked, what do you feel are your biggest challenges in getting to the right data to help move the needle on solving health and community issues? So we talked a little bit about the difficulty in getting the data, but sometimes getting the right data can be even harder. What are some of those challenges that you face?
So I'll take that, and I know Cheryl may have had some insights into this one too. But I would anchor on the last response that I actually gave around getting that survey data. But if I were standing in the shoes of some of my insights analysts and data scientists, I would say being able to get our hands on the sources of data that help us best answer the questions, the data questions that are being asked. And again, We don't have a lot of survey data on drivers of health needs. Surveys are very expensive to deploy, and we know that the return rate can be low. So sometimes there's not enough, juice for the squeeze, if you will. So sometimes we do rely on, obviously our internal claims data and then public sources of data, like the American Community Survey and census data and other, publicly sourced data. So being able to get our hands on the right data that will answer the questions that we need asked can sometimes be challenging.
And I'll just piggyback on that. Totally agree with what Tia is saying about getting the right data. But I also think that at some point we're going to have to work together. The hospital systems and the insurance, we have the data, right? So I think it's going to be important for us at some point to how do we work together and share this data and be able to overlay a lot of it and really have conversations. When I think about our health providers, just like Blue Cross and Blue Shield, they care about the health and wellness of our communities. If we could work together and partner and take that data, because a lot of times they are trusting their provider. And so they are completing the surveys with their providers. And so again, if we can take the information that they have, overlay it with the information that we have from a claim standpoint, I think we could really get to a point where we have the right data. But it's going to be about us working together and not trying to be, we have this and we have this, but really laying it out so we can help our customers.
Excellent.
Collaboration, working across sectors will be vital. Mm-hmm.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely. Okay. So Tia, this next person wanted to know, do you ever find that your data is skewed because information is not collected from certain demographics?
So I think it's the goal of any data analyst to have the most complete set of data as possible when they're moving forward with their analyses and modeling, doing algorithmic prediction models. We do find skewness in data, and it could be for a variety of reasons, right? Response bias, incomplete data, people did not complete the surveys, going, to that again. But skewness is so common in data science. So the data scientists on our Drivers of Health pod team have methods to test whether that skewness is significant. And then what they do is make efforts to normalize the data and account for the skewed variables. So it really is to try not to hinder the interpretation of the data. So yes, we find skewness. It's quite common. I think at Blue Cross, we are making an effort to ensure that all of our member demographics are, information is collected from them fairly. But that skewness, is kind of part and parcel to data science, and there are ways to overcome it.
Oh, absolutely. I think we touched on this a little bit earlier. Technology is great, but it's also imperfect because it's created by people. So you're right, having that that kind of healthy understanding that there will be some skewness to the data and overcoming it or parsing through it is absolutely invaluable. Okay, so just a quick reminder, everybody, we have about 15 minutes left in today's chat, and we are going to reserve the last 5 at the end for a couple specific questions about Blue Cross Blue Shield North Carolina. So if you have further questions that you want to ask, the best way, like I said, is to bring them up now. Make sure that you either put them into the chat or you can come off mute to ask them directly. So I'm going to hold for a couple seconds here in case anybody would like to come off mute to ask their question, and then we will get to the next question. Deepak, I see you came off mute. Would you like to ask your question?
Yeah, hi. I just wanted to understand how big is the data science team at Blue Cross Blue Shield? Like, is it specific to Blue Cross Blue Shield North Carolina, or is it like one team across the country? I just wanted to understand how big is the team and what are the different skill sets in that team?
Sure. So our data and analytics division is a large division within our organization that supports and drives all of the analytic needs for our business to move forward. We work within different pods, we'll call them. And these pods work on different business strategies. So for instance, my pod focuses on the drivers of health strategy, and the skill sets of people within that pod are myself. I'm kind of the liaison between the business and the analytics team as analytics consultant. And then, as mentioned earlier, we have data engineers that are on that team working together with insights analysts who really look at the data and try to translate for the business what the data mean. There are data consultants that help us really source that data when we're struggling to find, various sources of data, or we need new data to ingest to do our analyses. They help us find those sources. The data scientists, they're the ones who really work hard on those predictive models and those analytics. And for our organization, for Blue Cross of North Carolina, our data and analytics division is dedicated to our corporate entity. And I would assume that other Blue Crosses across the country have their own kind of in-house data group division as well. So it's many small teams within a much larger division for data and analytics.
Awesome, thank you for that, and thank you, Deepak, for that great question.
Thank you.
Okay, so moving on to our next question. This person had asked, how does BCBS look to engage during the current pandemic with vulnerable populations?
So I'll just say, during the pandemic, we have really looked at where do we need to be funding right now. And so again, when I talk about food insecurity, we have donated nearly $7 million since the pandemic, just around COVID relief. A lot of that was around food, but a lot of it was really touching communities of color. And so we worked with organizations such as the Camino Center in Charlotte. We worked with the Latin Chamber. We've also worked with our tribal community as well around food insecurity during this time. And so we will continue to be a entity that is investing around the state. When I think about, our community, and again, talking about the numbers, like our students, right? 45% of those students were on free and reduced lunch. Our team immediately stepped in to make sure that when COVID first hit, to make sure that those kids had food. We were investing in organizations that were getting food out into those vulnerable communities. But not only that, we really took a step back and said, what more could we do? And so for us at Blue Cross, we have a cafeteria on site. We started working with our cafeteria to actually prepare meals for families in our Durham community as well. And so again, we will continue during this pandemic as things start to arise. We're going to be here. We're going to be a partner. We're really listening. We have our ear to the ground in our community to understand what's happening. And so again, with the learning centers that were produced with kids going between virtual and being at home, we really leaned into those virtual learning centers to make sure that those kids had what they needed. We donated computers to students across our state in order that they would have access to computers as well, knowing that a lot of school systems didn't have the resources to be able to give computers to each student. And so those are some of the things that we've been doing, and those are the things that we will continue to do as we are working through this pandemic and through the recovery.
Can I weigh in from a data perspective, Meg?
Pardon?
Can I weigh in from a data perspective?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I just wanted to piggyback on what Cheryl's saying. And our Drivers of Health strategy team, once the pandemic hit, we really had to pivot, and our strategy team had to pivot, and we as the Drivers of Health data team really needed to provide a layer of insights that we hadn't been providing before. So what are the areas around the state that are most impacted by COVID? How do we then overlay that data with food insecure areas, with lower income areas, with areas that we know are under-resourced and may not have a food bank? Then we have layers that show us insights as to where these places, more than before, are where we need to deploy those resources. So we were able to, the data team was able to give that data, kind of pivot, give that data to our drivers of health strategy team, so they could then take that information, to the decision makers for those investments and, pilot programs that we're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. We also had a question that came up in the chat. Tammy was wondering if you've partnered with transitional living programs specifically for teens and young adults, as they typically have a lot of data on their participants, as well as the need for partnerships.
I can say that we have not, and so we haven't.
Okay. Well, thank you for the transparency there. And Tammy, thank you for raising that, because maybe that's an area that BCBS can look into going forward. Okay, so we have about 5 minutes left in the question section for today. So if you have another question that you'd like to ask, please feel free to come off mute and ask it, or you can also put it into the Zoom chat. One of our next questions, this person had asked, how do you ensure that the data you have respects privacy standards of people, like respecting and protecting patient privacy? And how do you handle confidential data ethically and confidentially during analysis?
Yeah, this is a great question, because we are extremely diligent at Blue Cross North Carolina with regard to privacy of data. So at Blue Cross, we actually have an area for data governance within the data and analytics division that I work in. Data governance, the role of this unit is to establish processes and responsibilities to really ensure the quality and security of our data. Anyone who touches data at our organization is considered a data steward, and the privacy of healthcare data is paramount for both our employees and our customers. So that said, data governance helps us to handle our data safely and securely within DNA. They do training so that we understand what we can and cannot do with data. And at an enterprise level, we have a privacy office as well that helps us to further understand and respect the value of protecting privacy, confidentiality of data, while adhering to legal, regulatory, and accreditation requirements like HIPAA. So there's there's a lot of training provided, a lot of areas that kind of oversee that data, that do that governing, so that we are ensured that all employees are aware of and to prevent any unauthorized privacy disclosures. So.
Awesome. Thank you for clarifying that. I know it can be kind of a sticky subject, especially during a pandemic. So thank you for that. Okay, so as a last question to kind of round us out here, this person had asked, how can you empower consumers, patients, and communities to leverage population health data to improve community conditions?
Yeah, so I love that question. There are so many ways that we can empower people to leverage data for health improvement. One way is to give them access to the data. Without data at their disposal, people are really unable to assess the needs and make data-driven decisions for improvement. So one way that's used to empower our members within Blue Cross North Carolina is through our member advisory group. That's a group that lends insight and opinion, or a consumer voice, to much of the work that we do. So these members that are selected are presented with data to better inform us as employees and the program makers on what they might need as members. So another way to empower the community to leverage this data is to come to the table with community members at the beginning of any corporate-led intervention. It's about collaboration, as we said earlier, and we want to ensure that there's engagement and buy-in and community input again. This kind of relationship can empower the community and encourage power balance, open communication, and trust for the groups that need to work together. So this can include efforts to increase data literacy, if that's a need for the group, so that they know how to understand and further work with data. So.
Awesome. Thank you so much for breaking that down. Okay, so we have about 5 minutes left in today's session. I want to make sure that we touch on this real quick. So in case you maybe joined us late or were not aware, Blue Cross and Blue Shield North Carolina is hiring. So of these three questions, I know I think Darren was going to join us to talk about the first, about positions that you're looking for. So before we skip over to Darren, I'd like to address the second question to both Tia and Cheryl. What are your favorite parts about working at Blue Cross and Blue Shield North Carolina?
You want to go first, Cheryl?
Yeah, so I will say my favorite part is the people. We are in COVID right now, but I love the people that work at Blue Cross. Blue Cross has a very rich culture, a culture of giving back to our community, and our employees are absolutely engaged in the work and feel like they're part of the strategy that's happening at our company as well. And while I miss seeing people being at COVID, as Tia said earlier, like our employee networks, they're having events. So to be able to connect in spaces like this still gives us the opportunity to connect, but it is the people. I think the people make the culture at Blue Cross. And I enjoy being with them. I enjoy meeting the new people when I meet new people at Blue Cross. And so it's truly the people that makes it special to me.
So in addition to the people, you took mine, Cheryl, I would say our keen focus on community. I don't think I realized before coming to Blue Cross that, I would still have an opportunity to work on, community health interventions, and, to work in a company where community is such a high priority, from Cheryl's team to our foundation to our newly formed Drivers of Health strategy team that is implementing pilots out in the community. So there are just so many ways that we are supporting, our larger community in North Carolina, and it's impressive, and it's fun to be a part of.
Awesome, thank you so much. So I'm going to call out Darren if he's on the line and would like to jump on here. One of our questions talks about what positions y'all are hiring for at BCBS, as well as tips for anyone who's interested in applying. So Darren, if you'd like to come off mute and kind of jump in here, you're more than welcome to.
Sure, thanks, Meg. Thank you, Cheryl and Tia, for a wonderful afternoon. So at Blue Cross Blue Shield North Carolina, we are looking to fill many positions, many different diverse types of positions across our enterprise. We do have quite a few vacancies right now in the information technology group, but generally speaking, this is a little bit of a slower time of year for us. I would expect there to be more positions again across the enterprise opening in the January and February timeframe. If you visit Blue Cross Blue Shield Careers and do not see what you're looking for at this time, please feel free to join our talent community. By joining the talent community, you will receive periodic outreach from our organization as it relates to job openings, but just information and or news in general. It will also provide you with the opportunity to be automatically linked to positions that you indicate are of interest to you when they do become available. So there are lots of reasons to visit Blue Cross Blue Shield North Carolina. And even if you don't see something that is right for you at the moment, it's possible and probable that there will be something in the future. So I would please encourage those folks to then join the talent community.
Awesome, thank you so much, Darren. And I see that I threw the link to Blue Cross Blue Shield North Carolina's PowerToFly page, as well as Nicole also shared the link to join their talent community. So please take a look at those links as well if you prefer. All right, so before we go, Tia and Cheryl, is there anything else that we maybe didn't touch upon, or anything that you'd like to leave our audience with before we end for today?
Just like to thank everyone for their time and for being interested in our organization, as well as our data and investments in the community.
Yep, same. Tia took the words right out of my mouth.
All right. Well, I just want to deliver a very heartfelt thank you to both Cheryl and Tia for coming on with us today, sharing your knowledge and your insight with the PowerToFly community. We're very grateful for your time. And also a huge thank you to all of our attendees, everybody who submitted questions prior to today's session, as well as those of you who came off mute or committed questions into the Zoom group chat. Thank you so much for participating. You guys really make these sessions really fun for everyone. So thank you so much for that. Like I said, I hope you all have a wonderful Tuesday, and I hope that you all will join us for many more events going forward. There's a couple links in the chat where you can check out our upcoming virtual events, as well as, like I said, more information about Blue Cross Blue Shield North Carolina. So thank you so much, everyone, and we'll hopefully see you around at future events. Bye.
Thanks, Meg. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.